For the purposes of this, we're just going to not use any right or left arrows. We're not going to use any horizontal movement, and the only movement that we're going to be using is going to be vertical movement to move our player up and down. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's first set our sprites to the correct position. So we want this platform to be over here, as we see in the costumes. And so this position right now is 0, 0, so we can keep that position. And as for your player, you want to make sure the player starts somewhat above or exactly on the platform, right? But what if in the middle of the game we wanted to let's say change where this platform was? What if I wanted it to be down here? We can't really have a set position for our platform yet, because we can't really have a set position for this player to land on, because if this platform suddenly goes up here, right? If we decided to start it up here, then we would have to make the movements, the position for the player a lot different, and it's hard to estimate where it's supposed to be. So the easiest way that we can make sure our player lands on the platform is to make it start a little bit higher. So a little bit higher, like about here. 1, 5, and 25. A little bit higher, and what we can make it do is make this slowly fall down until it touches this. But before it can fall down, we have to make sure it's set to the correct spot. And to make it fall down, all we have to do is to just change one of its coordinate values by a negative number each time. And remember what controls the vertical axis, right? The vertical is controlled by y, so that's up and down. So let's say if I wanted this to go more down, I could change this y value to -50. And as you can see, it went down. So we want it to slowly go down until it touches. So we can either do that, the more complicated way would be to use glide and make this go direct to this exact position every time. But like I said before, sometimes the platform might change position, like it might be up here, so we don't really know the exact position of this. And so the easiest way to do this would be to change the y value, to change the specific y value by a negative number, and we can make it change until it touches this platform. So what can we use in that? Well, remember under control, we have this repeat until block, and what we can make it do, what we can make this block do is go down slowly until our player here touches the platform. So I can bring that in, and let's change it by a small amount so that the player doesn't go like this. And we want to repeat it until it is touching the platform. So now if we play it, you can see that our player just stops at the top of our platform and it doesn't really go any far underneath. Okay, but remember what we talked about also in our maze game was layers, right? So depending on which sprite I'm touching, that's going to be the one at the very top layer. But for when we're actually in the game, we want to make sure that our player is always on the top. So right now our player is on the back layer, right? It's behind the platform. But I want to make it so that the player is always in front of the platform. So to fix this, remember all we can do is go into looks, and at the very bottom there are the layer options, and choose go to front layer, and for the platform go to front layer and then go backward one layer. So it's always one layer behind the player. Okay, so now that we have a general, just a short platform obstacle or like thing for our player to go through, we have to make the background move so that the player can maybe like jump off the platform or fall down to the bottom if it loses. So in order to do that, what we actually want to do is to not move this player, right? So if you noticed in this game over here, notice this player is always at this side. The player is always at this side of the screen. It's always on the right side of the screen, and the rest of the blocks are moving, right? Only the platform is moving. So if we play it again, you can see that it's only the platform moving, and our player is technically stationary except for any of the jumps. So that's how we're going to be able to move this. So what we can do is make this platform move. But which way do we want to move it? If we want our player to be going, this way, to the right. Then for our platform, we can't also make the platform go to the right because that will just make them both go in the same direction and our player won't get anywhere. So instead, we want to make this platform, this purple part, go left. So in order to do that, what we can do is bring out this forever loop right here. What we want inside is for this platform to go left just forever, right? So we can go under motion and let's say change x by. Now for this value under here, go left means negative, right? So go left is in the negative direction and going right is in the positive direction. But the specific like numerical value, -10, if we just change it from 10 to -10, you'll notice that it's really fast, right? And so the player doesn't even have enough time to land on it. So just for the purposes of us right now, we're going to make it pretty slow. We're just going to make it -1 for right now. And you can see that it stops there. So you can test it again, and obviously you can change the speed of this later. You can always change this to a larger numerical number, like -5, which makes it a little bit faster, just like that. But if you notice right now, even with the -1 speed, you'll notice that our platform starts moving before our player actually lands on the platform. So how can we, fix that? Okay, so in order to fix that, remember we have, under events, we have these 3 message blocks, right? We can receive messages and we can broadcast messages for all of the sprites and all of the backdrops in our game. So that's what we want to do here. But be careful not to put your message inside of the repeat until, because this is going to basically repeat maybe, I don't know, maybe 100 times. So this, if this was here, your message would broadcast 100 times before the player actually touches the platform. But that's not what we want. We want the message to say, okay, I'm going to be, after I touch the platform, then you can start moving. Right? So we have to make sure to put it after to make sure we don't have any bugs. So we can rename this message to start. And then under platform, instead of putting this forever underneath the when green flag clicked, we can make it wait until it receives the message to change X by -1. So now if we test our code, you see that it's not moving until now. Okay, so it doesn't move until now, until it touches the purple part. But if you notice here, our player is not on our platform anymore. And usually if you're not walking on the ground, you're falling down on the ground, right? So we want to make sure that our player, if it does end up not on the platform, then it has to fall down to the very bottom. And we can actually do that the same way that we did this when I receive start. So we can make an if statement that says, if our player is off of the ground, if our player is not touching this platform, then it will go slowly towards the bottom. And we want it to make it go slowly, and we'll see why that is later. But basically, let's say if your player was jumping and the other platform was somewhere over here, then your player can actually jump onto the platform. It can actually stop at the platform instead of going down to the very bottom. So we don't want our player to go immediately down because we don't know if it's over a platform or not. So inside of our when green flag clicked, we can put another forever loop there and bring in an if statement. So like I said before, if our player is not touching the platform, if it's not touching this purple, then it's going to fall to the bottom. So remember, under our operators, we have this not boolean, and under sensing, we have touch. Oops, sorry, not this one, this one. For under here, and if it's not touching the platform, then it's going to change the Y slowly by 1. So same thing as up here. As you can see, it's already running. So once it's completely off the platform, you'll see that the player slowly goes to the very bottom. And underneath here, what you can do is you can also make it go to the very bottom until it is touching the edge. Remember, the edge is one of these options here, but that might make the player only go to here instead of the very bottom. So we want the player to go to the very bottom as much as possible so that the player knows that he or she has failed to land on a platform. Alright, so now that we have some sort of moving background for this, we also want it want there to be multiple like levels or like multiple movement options for our platform, right? So right now, what we have is just this one block right here. So under our platform, all we have is this one purple platform right here. But you want to be able to build onto this. You want to be able to create more levels, maybe make some jumps, make some obstacles for your player to go through. So we can just make some of them here right now. So I can make my next obstacle a little bit higher, actually just by copying this, pasting this. Can make it make this about over here and then a little bit higher if you want. So now we have these two. So let me set the platform back to 0 so you can see. So something very important to note if you're going to be creating platform games such as this where you have a scrolling background is to make sure that the very beginning and the very end, they are both kind of like touching the ends. They kind of overlap right here, as you can see over here. And what this will make sure is that when you go on to create more extensions to this, like if you wanted to make this platform maze longer, then you can make sure that each of your platforms start at the same place, so it doesn't create kind of like an awkward stagnant, like kind of awkward break off at the end. So now that we have this simple platform, we're going to just do this much for right now, and I'll teach everyone how to add more onto this later. But now, if you look at this, we need to have a way for our thing to jump, also for our player to jump, and also for it to not touch at like the bottom of a platform, right? So that's we don't want this to happen. We want to make sure this black part lands on the very bottom of this black part, lands on the top of this purple platform. We have to make sure that the red part isn't touching. But first, let's try and make a way for our player to jump. So if you remember from our previous maze game, we used a bunch of if statements underneath our forever loops to detail the movements of like our cat, our car, and that's basically the same thing that we're going to do here, except we're only going to do it for the up arrow because that's pretty much all our player needs. So we're going to bring out an if statement and put it underneath our if not touching platform, and we're going to say if key up arrow is pressed, then what do we want to? Well, if the up arrow is pressed, then we want the player to go up, right? And we pretty much only need it to go up. We only need this to go up like this and back down. And that's because, remember, our player isn't moving, the platform is moving, right? So if our player just jumps up and the platform underneath it is still moving, then eventually it will touch the platform. So we can say if key up arrow is pressed, then go into motion, can change Y by a specific amount. So for our cases, we can make our player jump pretty high. So I'm going to test 50 first. Okay, so what you just saw was, okay, you go to the, as you can see, that was definitely more than 50, and you can see that I can still jump even though my player isn't touching the platform, right? So during any game, or like even in real life, if you jump, your feet have to be first touching the ground, right? Your feet have to be first touching the ground before you can jump to a certain height. But what we have right now in our game is basically like a zero gravity effect. Our player is jumping even in the sky, and that's not really what we want. We want it to be jumping only if it's touching our platform right here. So we can change that. We can change the condition of this boolean from key up arrow pressed, and we can include an operators here and include an and remember an and, for an and, both sides of the boolean have to be true. So the up arrow has to be pressed, and the player has to be touching the platform. So the up arrow has to be pressed and it's touching the platform. So right now you can just click on this, click on the boolean here, and it'll tell you the value. So right now our player is slightly above the platform, but if I move it a little bit on top, oh, it's still false because the up arrow key is pressed. But if we test our code right now, you can see that I'm currently like pressing down my up arrow key, and you can see that it doesn't go all the way to the top, right? It only goes a specific amount. It only changes the Y by 50, and then it comes back down. Comes back down and then touches our platform again. Okay. So our game right now is we can move this, we can make it jump, but if you notice here, what the square our player just did was it went off of this, platform right here, and then it just immediately went to the bottom. Like this. Well, in the games, you can't really have your players like not have their feet on the top, right? If your players are like dangling like this and their feet are at the bottom, there's a very low chance that they'll survive, right? So we have to make sure our player is able to survive, not just it will have a slim chance of surviving. So we want to make sure our player jumps from here to the top over here. And that's where the colors come in. So if you didn't make if you made your player all the same color, or you can just go ahead and add a second layer down here. So I added a black rectangle to the bottom of this and just overlaid it so it looks like this. And you have to make sure that they're two different colors for this part of the code to work. So the concept that we're going to be using is if our player over here, if any of this red part, any of this red is touching the purple platform, then it's just going to automatically lose. So if we look over here under sensing, these color, touching color booleans, that's what we want. But we want to be using the second color option. The color blank is touching another color. That's because we want to make sure that the color red, want to make sure that this top part, the top color, is touching the platform color right here. You might be wondering, how do I match these colors? How do I make sure that this red, how do I make sure that the red that I choose here is the same as this one, and the purple that I choose here is same as this one? Well, what you can do is click on this little drop over here, drop icon, and you'll see this large kind of like eraser symbol, and you can put it over any of them. So for the first one, you want to put it over the red top color here. For the second one, you can put it over the platform, and you can see these color values change automatically. So let's just make it green, and we're going to check the color. So I'm going to hover over this purple, and you can see that the color changes. Now back to the game. What we want this to do is, if the color red is touching our platform, then we want it to go kind of to like an end screen, right? Like a game over screen. So we can bring out another one of our if statements. And for this one, we don't really want this to drop to the very bottom, right? Our player kind of already knows that if they touch any part of the red to the purple, then it's going to just be game over for them. So what I want everyone to do right now is to find a way to show a certain screen when this color red is touching the purple, and when it does, what screen do we want it to show? And a little hint for this, we're going to be needing a new sprite. So I want everyone to finish the code for this to say, if our red is touching the purple, then we want the screen to immediately say like game over or game lost, and also create the screen for that. Give everyone 1.5 minutes because this should be pretty familiar. Okay, that should be enough time, and I'm going to go over the solution right now. So this is what your code should be looking like. Under the player, you want it to broadcast a new message, so I called it lose. And then I created a new sprite called end screen, just like we did for our other game, maze game. Right over here. And what I made it do is to go to the center. Right now it's not in the center, but when it does receive lose, when the player does, when the red part of the player does touch the platform, then this will show, and also make sure it goes to the front layer so we don't see anything that's happening in the background. So if we just quickly test the code right now, you can see that just as the player touched the platform, we made it say game over. And we can actually do the same thing for if our player touches the edge as well. So if the player goes all the way to the bottom, the player goes all the way to the bottom right here, and it's touching the edge, then we can say broadcast lose. So under this, we can put an OR operator. So color is touching, color red is touching purple, or the sprite itself is touching the edge. So I'm going to make my speed a bit faster. And you can test your jump. Just right now my jump isn't quite enough, so just change it by you can see that the player is falling to the bottom, and it also goes to this game over screen. Okay, so now we have sort of this like basic movement for our player and platform. What we can start doing now is to create a longer platform. So we're only going to be doing one more extension of this, but if you wanted to, you can you'll create more on your own time. But for right now, we're only going to be doing one more extension. I'm going to make this a little bit short. Okay, so what you want to do is, for this, you want to make sure that the end of your platform over here is at the same height that the beginning of your platform is going to be when it connects at the end of the platform over here. So an easy way to just make sure it connects is to just duplicate it. And so for this one, you can just press down your left arrow key to bring it all the way over. Okay, so it's all the way over on this side. Make it a little bit shorter, and then now what you can do is to just start making more more adjustments to this. So I can let's go to the very end here, and something that we really want to add in this is like an endpoint, right? So most runner games, they have kind of like a goal at the end. what we're going to use instead of like that flag goal that you usually have is to just create this little green square and add it to the end over here. Okay, so have this. Okay, but now we have two costumes over here. We have the starting costume and we have our ending costume over here where there's a green flag at the end for our player to reach. So at the beginning, we have to make sure that our player goes to the correct platform, right? Because it's starting at a specific height and our player is trained to land on this height right here. So we have to make sure we switch the costume to start at the very beginning. So it'll go to this. But we want to have it continue, right? We don't want to, we have to make sure that we can continue our platform. So that's where what we talked about at the very beginning about clones, that's where clones come in. So we can actually create a clone for our platform over here. We can create another copy of our platform sprite, but put it at the end over here so that it starts over here. And then we can make the costume of that be the end so that it looks like our platform is continuing, even though it's just a copy of the platform. So when I receive start underneath here, we can go under control and add a create clone. Can make this create a clone of itself so that when it eventually reaches this endpoint over here, the new maze will start. And we'll see how to do that just in a second. All right. So in order to control what the clone version of our player does, we need to make sure to bring out a bumped capped block when I start as a clone. And underneath here, we have to make sure at the very beginning this platform goes to the end over here. Platform all the way over here so that it's kind of like blending in, right? So this, we can make it go to X. I think it is about 440, 450, something like that. Can make it go there, and then this will make it move along with this right here. And we also have to make sure this costume is end, so we don't end up doing the same platform twice. So now if you test your code, okay, you'll notice that it does move with your object, but as you can see here, once the first set, so once this first costume here, the start costume, it reaches the end, it doesn't actually go away, right? That's because Scratch has boundaries, and so it can't exactly go all the way over here where we can't see it. So we have to make sure that once our platform is all the way over here, then we can make it hide, right? So we can actually do that under our when I receive start code. And I can say if our platform is all the way to the left, then the original sprite, the copy will still be there, but the original sprite that's called platform, we want that to hide. So looks, we want to bring out a hide, and we want it to hide when if the X position right here is a certain value. But like we saw in the maze game, sometimes this platform moves too fast, right? And this X value misses a number, so we can't really write a specific number. Like we can't write if X position is equal to negative 469. You can't write that because it might glitch and it will still be stuck here. So the easiest way to do this is just to make it less than. So if our X position is less than, say, 469, then we can make it hide. And we want this section of code to be always evaluated, so we can put it inside of our start code, make it hide then. But we also have to make sure to show it at the beginning, so let's add that in right there. So now if I run it, you shouldn't be able to okay. Okay, maybe it's not 300 or 400 and okay. So the reason this thing bar isn't hiding right now is because of negative 469 is the very minimum value, so it can't go past that. But the X position right now is, so right now it's negative 469, but negative 469 is not less than itself, right? It's only equal. So we could actually change this to an equal, but to just keep this structure, we can just make this less than negative 465, and then it should hide. All right, so now you can't see it anymore. But now, what do we have? Now, remember when we added this green block right here, this green block? Our player is still going past it, and it's still going to fall down. And that's because we haven't set anything for our player to react to the green yet. So we can do that really quickly right now. And we can do that pretty much the same way that we did our lose broadcast. If it's touching if it's touching platform or if it's touching edge, we can bring out the same if block under control, but instead of if color is touching color, we can just say if this player is touching the green, right? Because no matter what, whichever color touches the green side, our player will always win. So instead of using that, we can use this first color Boolean block here, and for this one, to make sure that we can capture what color it is here, we can just simply manually change the costume of platform, go back to player, and then click the eyedrop here and move it over the green. What we want to do is do the same thing, except now we want to broadcast win, right? Want to make sure that once we hit the end goal, we can win the game. So let's now go to our end screen, and same as we did for lose, we can receive our win, but let's make a different costume. Let's make a new costume. Let's call it win. So the first one, we called it game over. Now we can call it win. So let's create a simple win background for our player. Okay, and back in our code, we have to make sure we can we know which costume to show whenever we receive each one of these messages, right? So we can just switch the costume in accordance. So now if our player reaches the very end, it will go to this you won screen. Right? Okay. And if you just notice there, my screen went to you won, but it also went to game over very quickly, right? And that's because, if you notice over here, that's because our forever loop was still running. This one, right? Our forever loop was still running. As you can see here, this thing is still running, so it's our platform's still moving, and our player is still moving, right? Because it's not touching any platform right now. It's kind of just like floating in the air, and it doesn't have any platform to land on. And that's because our platform has already left. So our player just keeps on going down and down until it keeps on going down and down until it touches the edge. But that's not what we want, right? We want to make sure that if if this end screen does appear, then we want to make sure to stop everything else. So remember, under control, we can stop all the movement, and we can do the same under our platform sprite here. We can say, when I receive lose, then stop everything else in this sprite. Want to stop everything else that's happening here, stop the platform movement, and we also want it to happen when we receive win. And we can do this, bring this also to the player, so that the player doesn't keep on moving down. So now if we test it, everything should stop when these things occur. So if you notice, our player, you can see the Y value right here. It isn't moving. So yeah, that's what we want. So previously, without these ones, without this, without these message calls, the Y value would keep on changing. If you notice our Y value here, it's always changing. That's because it's always moving. And now it's stopped because we've stopped all the movement in all of our sprites. But that's just something to make sure you do for any game that you code in Scratch, is to make sure that if you do have forever loops in your code and you want an end to your code, to make sure to stop whatever's happening so that you can You can make sure a bug doesn't happen and a random screen doesn't just, randomly appear, right? Okay, so I'm going to give everyone maybe 1 more minute to finish up this game and maybe try different speeds for yourself. You can like change the speed of your player over here, can change the speed of your platform, things like that. So everyone right now, you can just experiment for about a minute, finish up the code, and we should be done with the game. All right, so if anyone here has not finished up, the game is in the chat for all of you guys to access. You can play my game, you can build off of my game, you can add sound effects, everything like that. So since this is our last session in this course, I wanted to give everyone some resources. If you ever need help in Scratch, just some resources that you can use when you go code forward. So one of them is the Scratch Wiki right here. So this, you can see, it looks very similar to the Scratch website, except there's a lot of help that you can get. So you can get help with the Scratch website, the Scratch program. So this tells you all of of the blocks, all of the different features in Scratch. So like the list we didn't really talk about, and that's because it's a little bit more complicated concept, but you can create a list and access different elements from a list, and yeah. So you could explore Scratch Wiki on your own time, and I recommend mainly only looking at the Scratch program, because under the tutorials, all of these are pretty simple tutorials that are on here, and what we went through in this course was much more deeper than that, much more advanced. So if you do want to use the Scratch Wiki, you can go under the Scratch program over here and access it there. I'm going to paste the link in the chat so everyone can access that. And I'm not sure the actual site for this, but there should be another site actually. I can't quite remember it, what it's called right now, but I think it's similar to this wiki, but you can get help for different types of programs, like what we just did with the scrolling platform game. You can actually search up different different things that people have posted here, different official documents over here, like jumping. Like you can get the code that is in here, and pretty much these there are some pretty like complicated concepts here. Some of them are relating to like physics and stuff, so these tutorials are pretty complicated, but if you are looking to create a new Scratch project but you don't really know where to start, the Scratch Wiki is a great place to look at what you want to do. You can see even here, like some of this code is very similar to what we just did in our game right here. So it's pretty useful, but I would recommend for this to not just directly copy the code, because as you can see, there are blocks like these. There's like the jump block, which is this pink block, which is a method. Like these, it's not completed code, so it's hard to tell if like it's hard to know like what this jump code actually is unless you actually take time to, you know, like think about what you really want your sprite to do. So those are just some resources that you can use, and there are many other ones online. You can just search up any problem that you have within Scratch, and the internet should be pretty helpful. But you know, if anyone doesn't have any more questions about our time today with our simple scrolling platform game, then you guys are all free to go. And yeah, so thank you for coming here for the past 6 weeks to the Scratch course, and I hope that now you have a deeper understanding of how each block in Scratch works, and now you have several games, 2 games, to show off to, like, you know, your friends if you want. Show them that you created games in this Scratch course. Yeah, so if anyone here doesn't have any more questions, you're free to go. And once again, thank you for the time that you spent in this course. All right, have a great rest of the day, everyone. Lillian, did you have a question?
No, I don't have any questions.
All right. Yeah, you can leave, and thank you for being here for this course. Have a great day.